the members that we have in attendance today as well, please, for those watching via the digital stream.
Yes, Chair. The members in attendance are Councillors Birch, Clark, Cusack, Dawson, Karen Guido, Hamilton, McCusker, Neil Reynolds and yourself, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Edwards. Thank you. Okay, members of the panel, are you happy to include part 1 and 2 of the agenda? Councillor Cusack?
The Monetary Officer has advised that declare that for a number of applications in along with the staff associated with the University of Salford and also on the governing council of the University of Salford. However, as they provide serving on delegated powers, I don't envisage that there would be a problem with that.
No. Thank you for your declaration, Councillor Cusack. Thank you so much. Okay, any other declarations of interest, members, before I move on? No. Okay, are you happy to approve the minutes from the previous meeting held on the 1st of April?
Aye.
No problem. And just before we move to planning applications, it would be amiss of me not to welcome back Councillor Jane Hamilton. Councillor Hamilton, you've had a little break from the planning panel, but most welcome back. We're looking forward to having you back on the panel. And it's not easy work, so thank you for coming back. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Mr. James Catley is our first presenting officer. Mr. Catley, can I hear you?
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Catley. Mr. Catley, you are a bit faint. Members, Councillor Guido, can you hear Mr. Catley? Mr. Catley, can you just say Councillor Karen Guido, please?
Councillor Karen Guido.
Is that loud enough? Is that okay? Okay, Mr. Kelly, could you just flick to your next screen? I think I just saw your mouse move, but I just want to know if your presentation is not stuck. Yep, your addendum sheet. It's pages 15 to 22 on your meeting papers. Over to your good self, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This application seeks consent to convert a mid-terrace dwelling house on Alexandra Road in Eccles into 2 apartments, along with a rear extension and other external alterations. The site is situated on the northern side of Alexandra Road in a residential part of Eccles, close to Patrick Croft Recreation Ground. You can see there's a mixture of terrace and semi-detached properties in the vicinity of the site. These are some photos of the site taken from the front and the rear. The subject property is a 2-bed dwelling house with a private rear yard area that backs onto a gated alleyway. So planning permission is sought to convert the property into 2 apartments, a 1-bed unit on the ground floor and a 2-bed apartment on the 1st and 2nd floors. In order to facilitate the conversion, a number of operational works have been proposed, including demolition of the existing single-storey lean-to and its replacement with a single-storey rear extension, and a number of other minor alterations to doors and windows, including new roof lights and a new 1st floor rear window. The existing and proposed elevations are shown here for comparison. 10 letters of objection have been received in response to the application. The location of these residents marked here using blue stars. The principal concerns raised within the representations are set out in the officer report on page 17, I believe. Objections have also been received from Councillor Mullen, one of which is reported within your additional information report. A later objection notes that the proposal adds no value to the community or housing supply and would set a precedent for similar applications on the street in future. The site is situated in a sustainable area, and officers consider that the apartments will make a positive contribution towards meeting the housing needs of those requiring lower cost accommodation. The level of amenity that would be provided for future residents is acceptable, as is the impact on existing neighbouring residents. No car parking is provided with the property as existing or proposed. However, it's considered that the parking demands generated by the development will not be significantly different to the existing 2-bed dwelling, and the Local Highway Authority have confirmed that they are satisfied there will be no unacceptable impacts on the operation or safety of the local road network. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Catley. Thank you so much. Okay, I do believe I have two objectives present who wish to speak today. Is that correct, gentlemen? Are you both wishing to speak? Do shout, and I've got quite good hearing. No problem, gentlemen. I'd like to allocate you 5 minutes each, if that's okay, gentlemen. Is that okay? 5 minutes. Who's going first? No problem. And Amy, our usher, will take you to the table. Amy, would you be so kind to turn the microphone on? So if you press one of the buttons, sir, yes, that's our program. When you're sat down, you can remove your mask. It's when you're walking around, you're not. So if you could you press the silver button in front of you? Would that be okay? Oh, thank you. Sir, I'm not sure if you're Mr. Keelbus or you're Mr. Clark.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I object to it.
Sir, are you Mr. Keelbus or Mr. Parr?
Sorry?
So, what is your name?
Liam.
Okay, Liam Parr?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got you registered. Mr. Parr, just before you get to speak, if you could just tell us where you reside. The only reason why I ask that is just helps with members give context to what your submission is today. So, do you live locally?
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Parr. Mr. Parr, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
I'll give you a shout at 4 minutes, and over to your good self. Is that okay?
No problem. I live next door to the applicant's property, and I feel that the extension...
Well, I strongly object on the lack of parking space. I've lived in Alexander Road for well over 20 years, and gradually over the years, some of the houses near my property have been rented out. Then to bring the cars parking outside my house, I can't park there. Sometimes we have to, my wife, who suffers with arthritis in the knees, she has to park in the other street or on Stanley Park with the shopping. She struggles. My grandson lives with us. He's got hidden disabilities, and he has a school bus come for him in the morning. When the bus comes, it blocks the road, and it's causing congestion in the road because they're all, excuse me, because they're all double parked, and basically it's just causing confrontation with the residents, and it's stressing the local residents out in Alexander Road. And and we also feel that this property, if it was converted and it was approved, that it would be rented out, and there's a possibility there, a minimum of 2 cars, possibly 4, if they have a partner, whoever's going to be living in there, which is going to create more confusion and more congestion. I'm not sure. I think that's more or less everything, I think. I mean, I'll just have to add on your form as well, it says here that, on the letter that I said, it says here, improving people's lives in Salford. Now, if this is approved, we don't feel it's going to improve our lives in Alexander Road. It's going to cause more confusion, more people being stressed out, and more congestion. I think that's about it, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Just a feedback from your good self. I picked up very much that you mentioned about the encroachment of the rental market on the parking situation within your surrounding streets, and how vehicles are double parked, and how that there's congestion building up because there's only one access right down the middle of the road when everyone's parked either side.
There's actually in the past been mirrors knocked over other traffic going past. You know, it's
no problem. And I heard what you said about improving people's lives. I heard that.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Gilbert. Thank you so much. Okay, members, just before I bring you in, actually, no, we're not there yet. I do not believe we have any applicants agents in the room, Ms. Edwards.
No, Chair.
No, we don't. Okay, and no ward members have registered to speak for this application?
No.
No problem. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, just before I open up the debate, Mr. Catley.
Hello, Chair.
Yeah, could we just go back through the part of your presentation where it points out if there is a pitch roof or a flat roof arrangement within this development, just so everybody's clear about what the arrangements are?
No problem. Which you can see in the bottom left image there, that's a side view, and then the rear view, you can see the roof in this image here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Catley. Okay, is there any member wishing to speak? Councillor Guido, and I've got Councillor Clark, and I've got Councillor Dawson. Councillor Guido.
Thank you. I'm not happy about this. We are taking out of our housing stock a family home, converting it into two flats. But I can't get my head around why we intend to take out a family home and put these flats in it. But my main concern is, and I think the first gentleman, I'm sorry, I'm his name, mentioned about the first floor where it will be the flat. Now, we all know that in older houses the walls aren't that thick, so the point is that we understand that.
Sorry, Councillor Guido. I can hear you through my ears, but the other members can't hear you, so...
Right, thank you.
Councillor Guido, that's on me. I have a button to reset the microphones, and I failed to do that. My apologies.
I'll start again.
You please start again. No
problem. I cannot accept that we're taking out a family home out of this well-established family residence, and the area is very stable, and I think that this would be a detriment step if we were to actually make these into two apartments. But I think that one of my main concerns is that the apartment upstairs, the living rooms will be next to the house next door in their bedrooms, and with the best will in the world, I live in an old house myself and the walls are paper thin, so I think that there will be a disturbance for the neighbours because of the apartment being upstairs, the flat being upstairs. So I'm totally against this application. Because of the loss of a family home and because of the disturbance for the people who live next door, who will, I feel, be detrimental to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark, just before I bring you in, Mr. Catley, my understanding is this application is policy compliant from space standards terms. How much does it exceed the City Council's policy on space standards for each of the dwellings?
So the City Council's space standards at present is limited to a reference to the size that 2-bed units and above need to meet, and that is 57 square metres. I believe that the 2-bed unit on the first and second floor is 66 square metres in size, so that's an exceedance of 9 square metres. Okay,
thank you, Mr. Catley.
And if I may, though, I suppose it's worth noting that the 1-bed unit does meet the nationally described space standards for 1-bed, 2-person units, albeit that isn't a policy that we have in place at present.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Guido, I do sympathise with that it is policy compliant, but there is an amenity arrangement, isn't there, with this dwelling in the capacity that it is, and it might meet the numbers, but there is certainly the way the arrangement is. There is the way the street is built and the built form of that street. And the way the amenities that it enjoys within its immediate surroundings is challenged, and so I see where you're coming from. So.
I'm really sorry. The acoustics in here are terrible. I mean, my hearing's perfect, but I'm sorry I missed all that, because what I'm talking about is the noise level on the first floor for the neighbours next door, who will actually be, that's their bedrooms. We're not talking about, if you like, next to the living room, because that's going to affect the people downstairs as well, because their living room is going to be probably next to the bedroom. So it works both ways, and I'm not happy about that. So sorry, I don't know whether you said that or not, but that's the way I feel.
I was. In fact, thank you. You put it much more passionately than me. It's that amenity arrangement between. It's one house at the moment. It becomes two dwellings, and the way that it's arranged, the amenities are affected by the then new occupiers, and that's where my concerns lay. So, Councillor Clark, and I've got Councillor Dawson, and is there anybody else who's indicated? No, Councillor Clark. Over to you, good sir. Sorry, Councillor Birch.
Well, I'll echo everything that Karen's just said. As you know, I'm not a fan of taking perfectly good family homes out of the housing stock. We've had 10 objections, and as that gentleman said, it's about the people of Salford. Why should we disrupt a whole neighbourhood by allowing this? There's no reason to take a fine family home out of circulation in this city. I don't accept that there's no apartments in the city for people. We're building hundreds of the damn things, and yet now we're taking out traditional family homes and converting them into apartments, and I can't support it, and that's my view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Dawson, and then I've got Councillor Birch, and then I've got Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Dawson?
Yep, it's all right. Can you hear me? Yep. Yes?
I can hear you loud and clear,
Okay, thank you. I'm referencing to the pages, the two particular pages with information on which I'm not clear, and I want to get full of explanation from the officers. Page 19 and page 21. Page 21 is really, how do we work out, first of all, the floor square meterage? We've been told in the report that the windows on the sloping roof, the Velolux, I think, window, are 4 feet from the bottom. Which means if the full room is square meterage, or is it stand up? So I would think you need at least 6 feet to stand up. So therefore, it hasn't been massaged or, used to the advantage of the developer. The other thing it says on page 19 is, if you had a 2-bedroom with 4 people in, you need 70 square metres. These not, again, it's compounding the situation. But when you got a picture flat, again, it'll be well under that, and it's saying it's only 66 square metres, even with the best calculation. So therefore, it's below if you have a 2-bedroom, 4-person. And this is where it says general accordant on page 19, because if there are only 3 people in, it'd be okay. But if there are 4 people in, it's not okay. But we're not stipulating or putting a condition to stop 4 people coming into the 2-bedroom. So therefore, you could have a situation we have no control over, where 4 people come into that 2-bedroom, which then would be over the normal standards. So I would like a lot of clarity on all that, please.
No, you did mention page 1 as well. I didn't hear it. I heard page 19. Reference to page 21. Mr. Catley, did you Councillor Wilson there?
Hi, Chair. The audio was a little bit broken up there, but I think I've got the gist. I think there was a question around how the floor space is calculated for the 2-bed unit, given that a portion of it is in the roof space, and clarity around whether we are satisfied with the floor space provided in the 1-bed unit. Can you just clarify that was what was asked, please?
Yeah, the 1-bedroom is okay.
It's the 2-bedroom, Mr. Catley. If you could just go through how that's calculated, and is that a genuine or a disingenuous figure after it's been calculated?
The floor space is typically measured. Anything that is 1.5 has a headroom of 1.5 metres and over will constitute as usable floor space. So it will include a kind of a portion of that area under the eaves, if you like, but obviously some clear headroom as well. So that the kind of the smaller portions below 1.5 metres won't have been included. Also worth noting, obviously, that as I said earlier, at 66 square metres, that sort of comfortably exceeds the kind of 57 square metre guideline that we work to. In terms of the one bed unit, it is 50 square metres in size, which I think is considered to be a kind of a good size for a one bed unit. It's something that we do see. That's a sort of a common floor area that we do see across the city, and the nationally described floor space standards are obviously a kind of a guideline that we like units to kind of hit, but they're not a requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Catley. Councillor Dawson, you've indicated you want to come back?
Yeah, I don't know how to work the standards out, because 1.5 in my units is 5 feet. Now, nobody's less than 5 feet in this room. So that means you couldn't use the full square meterage. If you're 5 foot, I'm 5'9". A lot of people are 6 foot. So 5 foot or 1.5 meters is unusable space. You'd have to be crouching, kneeling to use that space. You can't walk in it or stand up in it. So it is a poor standard, that's what I'm saying. It's a poor standard to start with. And then if there's 4 people in, it's not even, they don't even meet it then, yeah. Anyway, that's all.
I've picked up from you, Councillor Dawson, that you believe that the amenity level being offered... No, Councillor Dawson, if I could just feed back to you, good self. My understanding is that, that you're suggesting that the amenity level being offered is not sufficient or good enough of quality for future occupying residents in the layout and the adaptation that is being proposed. That's what I'm picking up. Okay, I've got Councillor Birch and Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. In the notes to applicant, it says that the proposed development lies within a coal mining area which may contain and recorded coal mining related hazards. If any coal mining features are discovered during the development, it should be reported. However, it sounds like it can cause a lot of damage, potentially. So whose responsibility is it to rectify, and do we need any more? Do we need to look into this issue a little bit deeper, or is it not even the planning issue? Thank you.
I don't know how much weight to give to it. Mr. Catley will give you such. I think it might be our standard condition set. Mr. Catley, did you pick up what Councillor Birch spoke about?
Hello. Yes, that's our kind of standard informative. If there was a kind of a genuine risk, then we would have asked for a kind of a coal mining risk assessment for those applications that are sort of at closer proximity to areas where coal mining has sort of taken place in the vicinity. This is just a standard informative.
Is that okay, Councillor Birch? Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Hamilton, thank you for waiting so patiently. Over to yourself. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Members, Councillor McCusker. Over to you, good self. Yep. Press the button. We'll find.
Mic on now?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I grew up in a terrace house that was converted, so there was family upstairs, there was families downstairs, This is a policy compliant application. The idea that families can't live in flats, I find strange. So I don't think this is losing a family unit. The number of cars, you could have cyclists living in here. If as an existing home, you could have a family with 4 cars, 5 cars. So the difference between what this application is proposing, I feel that there isn't enough here for us to reject a policy compliant document. In terms of overlooking, in terms of light, then within the report, the officer has clearly stated reasonings behind why he is recommending this, and therefore I propose that we move this, Chair. I move the report accepted.
Thank you, Councillor McCusker. Is anyone willing to second the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cusack?
I second, Chair, what Councillor McCusker said. I think the officers have looked at this very carefully. I think it complies with everything that it needs to comply with. I think it's unfortunate that there are elements of it that that give people worries, but on the grounds that the officers have been through the legislative regulatory background on this, I don't see that we've got any real grounds for refusal, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Thank you so much. Councillor Reynolds, and I believe Councillor Clark, did you indicate? I've got everyone in order. I don't want to disrupt anything here. Councillor Reynolds.
I totally agree that this is policy compliant, but I still really don't like it at all. I would love to find proper grounds to say, no, we should refuse this, but it seems to just about fulfil every policy, even though I don't like what they're doing here. So it is reluctantly that I probably would have to support this. I would like to know more about whether we could use the grounds for like loss of privacy, but no need to look more at which rooms they're overlooking, whether it's one that we can take into account. The parking does look to be an issue here, but not enough of one to really strongly suggest that we would win if it did go to appeal. I really don't like the application, like I said, but I can't see enough in there to say we need to refuse or we could refuse. I'd love to find something where we could.
But you have got an open mind about the application. No problem. Yeah, Councillor Reynolds, if it wasn't a housing providing coming forward with it, I would be a bit more discomforted because they have a proven track record of delivery of this housing provider. So, but I know it's all. Councillor Clark, I haven't missed you. Sorry about that.
I've not heard one positive thing about this, and yet we moved it for approval. It's ridiculous. So I'm going to move it for refusal on loss of amenity for both the occupants and the residents adjacent to it. You know, we have to draw the line sometimes. You might think it's policy compliant, but it causes more damage than it does good. So I'll move it for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Is there a seconder for that? Anybody? Okay, second it. Okay. Right, let's just get everything in order, members. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded for the Officer's recommendation, and it's been moved and seconded for refusal. I heard the word amenity down there, Councillor Clark, but Mr. Catley, did you hear Councillor Clark's reasons that he put forward for refusal?
Hello there. Yes, I heard Councillor Clark. I think what would be useful for officers is if that loss of amenity could be clarified a little bit, please, in more specific terms.
Councillor Clark, would that be okay, please?
Well, the overlooking, the parking, the noise for the residents adjacent, the occupants inside not being able to have a decent quality of life through being interrupted, it just doesn't work. These houses were never designed to be flats. They're terraced family homes, you know, with thin floors and thin walls. We have to think of the occupants when we make these decisions.
Okay, Mr. Catley, did you pick that up?
I
Yes, I'm happy to kind of provide a kind of response or clarification on some of the points that Councillor Clark has raised there, if that would be useful.
Yeah, well, I'll just let you summarise that back for a second or two, and I'll just take Councillor Hamilton and I'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm desperately looking for something within the policy to refuse this.
Yeah. And
what I don't want to do is have no reason to go to appeal. So I think Councillor Dawson's size issue would be a relevance.
it's members, if I could just caution us about our language a little. We shouldn't be desperate to be looking to refuse things and scratching around for things. If things are policy compliant, then they are policy compliant. An application should be judged on its merits, and we shouldn't be scurrying around to look for reasons to refuse things, because that can be seen as us being a prejudice or holding a set of views that are contrary to having an open mind. So we just need to be careful with our language. Is that okay, members? I'm not telling anybody off, I'm just cautioning us how we approach our decision making, because the way it can be perceived from the outside. Councillor Guido, I promise Mr Kelly I'll bring him back in. Councillor Guido, and then I'm going to move to the vote once I understand where Mr Catley is and with Councillor Clark's motion.
Thank you very much. You know, if we want to vote against it, right, we can do. Right? We don't have to move any amendment to actually refuse it. It's been moved and seconded that we accept it, and those people who don't agree with that can actually vote against it. We had a training session last week regarding this sort of thing, and I think this is our first thing then, and I think probably what we should have done was actually speak to the officers. We're all lay people here, and what we're saying in a lay way, right, to everybody is that this will actually be, it may be compliant, but this is not fair to the people who are moving into those apartments, those flats. They're going to have bedrooms next to living rooms. The people in the houses that are already there are going to have living rooms next to their bedrooms. And that cannot be the way that in 2021 we're actually moving to. So I know it may be compliant, but as a lay person, I don't think that we should be passing this sort of thing in Salford, and that's why I sit on the planning committee. And yes, perhaps we should have actually gone to one of the officers and asked for the grounds, but it's quite difficult as lay people to actually come up with a ground. And our grounds are, we would like it to put in words, that the amenity of these two houses next to one another are going to suffer because of these apartments.
Thank you, Councillor Guido. The motion, as you know from experience, Councillor Guido, that the best way to make the strongest motion is for members to give their sentiments, for the officers to receive that sentiment, and then write it into the wordage that the planning system is. Because yes, you are right, we are all lay members, and if any refusal motion is approved, then that gives it the greatest chance of standing up at any test. And from experience, this works. So Mr Catley, you've heard the sentiments of the two members who would like to see this application, who have moved and seconded it for refusal. Could you just feed back the sentiments that you've picked up? And then, because it's contrary to officer's recommendation, I'll take that vote first, and I'll need to bring in the Assistant Director for Planning to inform the panel of the impact that motion may have. So, Mr Catley.
Thank you, Chair. So the concerns, as I understand them, are around overlooking from the ground floor windows, the noise transfer between principally the kind of upper floor apartment and the adjacent neighbours either side, and concerns around parking pressures. In terms of the potential loss of privacy at ground floor, you will see from the slide in front of you here that the ground floor windows on the side are replacing sort of existing openings, so there's an established relationship there. The new set of patio doors on the rear will face a rear wall and then an alleyway beyond that. In terms of the noise, this is I suppose principally a matter for building regs. Given that a change of use is taking place, they will be considering issues around noise transfer as part of their own assessment. However, if needed, we could consider adding a condition in relation to party wall noise mitigation. And then in terms of parking, officers have noted the sustainable location. I think it's about 350 metres from the nearest neighbourhood centre, good access to kind of bus stops. And also, I think if there are any additional pressures for parking on the street, I think it would be likely to be maybe 1 or 2 cars. And in the context of a street of this length and nature, that's not considered to be significant or severe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Catley. Councillor McCuskey, you have indicated I do really want to get to the vote on this. So
yeah, it's a point of order about the vote. Given that we had a recommendation to improve, which was seconded, normal procedure will be that that vote will be taken, and those that didn't want it would then vote against that. It's just I'm just.
No problem. My understanding that over the years, if I've always had a motion that's contrary to officer's recommendation, I take that motion first, no matter what that is. We do have our legal counsel online. Mr. Irvine, are you with us?
Yes, Chair, I am. Can you hear me?
Mr. Irvine, would you just introduce who you are, please?
Sorry, yes, I'm Robert Irvine. I'm a solicitor with the Shared Legal Service, and I'm the legal advisor for the panel.
No problem. I understand that the procedure of the meeting is that if we have a motion contrary to officer's recommendation, that we need to take that vote first before the officer's recommendation.
That's the usual practice, Chair, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Irvine. I will continue on, Councillor McCuskey. Councillor Clark, does your motion for refusal still stand? Okay. And could I just understand that just quickly from your good self, so I've not missed anything? Could I just quickly understand your motion so I can just move forward? Could you turn your microphone on, please?
So it still stands.
Lack of amenity. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Guido, are you still willing to second that? Yeah. Fabulous. Okay, because we have a motion contrary to officer's recommendation on the table, I do need to bring in the Assistant Director for Planning to inform the members of any impacts that they may have by voting for that motion. Mr. Hodgson, if you could just introduce yourself first, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Martin Hodgson, Associate Director of Planning at Salford Council. I mean, as obviously members know and have obviously read the report, their duty is to obviously have regard to the development plan as it applies to this proposed development and any other material consideration. Obviously, we've heard a lot about potential loss of a family home. I think members are clear that in terms of policy H1, it's not about, the policy test is not about losing a family home. Despite your own sort of reservations about this, the policy test is about obviously contributing to the provision of a balanced mix of dwellings within a local area in terms of size, tenure and affordability. Obviously, having listened to the debate, members are not necessarily raising potential reasons for refusal around the loss of that family home to apartments. The development plan obviously does
Mr. Williams, I can't have conversation with members when they're being given advice from a senior officer about a motion they're about to vote on. You can't hear it. Can you hear me? Yeah, well, can you hear me?
No, you're muffled. Sorry, up here.
Yeah.
If you are very muffled, right? And I didn't hear one word. And I was asking him if this can be turned on. I'm not being disrespectful.
No.
I need to listen to what is being
Yeah, but if you could indicate to me as the chair, I can pause the meeting and get your facility, so then everybody then is at the same speed in the meeting, because you can't run a meeting if everyone's not taking part. So, Councillor Green, would it help if you moved desk?
No.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Hodgson,
yeah.
Can you raise your voice,
yeah.
please?
Councillor Clark, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No problem. So could we raise our voices, please, and speak louder and clearer?
Yeah, so
okay?
apologies, panel, if I seem to be shouting here, but obviously so everybody can hear. And it's the same for me, Councillor Clark and Councillor Guido, when you're speaking, we have got the same acoustic problems, but just trying to listen as best we can. Just to repeat in terms of what I said before, your sort of task, your duty is to consider this application in accordance with the relevant policy in the development plan. We've heard discussions and debates around the loss of a family home, but as the development plan says at policy H1, the test is not about the loss of a family home, it's about creating a balanced mix of dwellings in an area, whether it's about type, affordability, size or tenure. The concerns that have been raised are, as advised in the motion, are to do with overlooking, noise transfer and sort of parking pressures and congestion. The officer, Mr. Catley, has already explained in terms of the relevant policies around sort of DES 7 are met in terms of those elements. So there is no significant or adverse overlooking from the proposal. The noise transfer, we are advised, is a building control, building regulation issue. And if members wanted the additional assurance that a planning condition could be imposed where we ask for a scheme to be submitted to deal with noise transfer, whether it's between the two apartments, the new apartments below and above, or indeed on the party walls. So, as members know, conditions can be applied to try and remedy a particular issue that you may have. The parking issues, obviously, we need to take into account the fact that this is an existing home with, obviously, its parking requirements, and we're advised through officers that the addition of essentially another apartment, if you take the existing houses having a traffic demand, would not result in severe pressure on the road. So on that basis, Chair, if we were to recommend a refusal is made, there would be potential grounds for that, for officers not to be able to substantiate that adequately, and potential award of costs against the City Council for potentially, if we couldn't substantiate that, Chair, for unreasonable behaviour. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Hodgson. Okay, Mr Cusack, Councillor Cusack, unless it's a point of order, I'm going straight to the vote of the refusal motion. That's the procedure, unfortunately. So, members, if you are in favour of the refusal based on the lack of amenity, please show your hands now. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3. Anyone against the refusal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And any abstentions? Okay, the refusal is fallen. Now, it's been moved and seconded for the officer's recommendation. Councillor McCusker, are you still moving the officer's recommendation? And Councillor Cusack, are you still seconding the officer's recommendation?
On your advice, Chair, I'd like to move condition. And the condition that was suggested by Mr Hodgson about noise transference and the party wall.
No problem. Second that. Okay, Mr Kelly, did you hear that with us? That we want to add a condition for the noise through the party wall?
Yep, that's been received and noted down. Thank you.
No problem. Is that okay? So it's been moved and seconded for approval with an extra said condition to alleviate the amenity between the dwellings. I believe that's the case. So all in favour of the approval, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Any against the approval? That's 2. And any abstentions? No. Okay, I believe there's 9 members in the room, Ms Edwards, and the vote was 7-2 in favour of approving the plan application. So, ladies and gentlemen, the plan application has been approved. Thank you so much for your attendance. Okay, members, moving right on to item 5B, which is pages 23 to 46. It's Mr Catley again presenting. Mr Catley, have you updated your screen to the next plan application? This is land east of Earlham Wharf Road. Gentlemen, if you do feel like leaving, I'm sure Amy or colleague will help you. Thank you so much for your attendance. So I'm trying to carry on with a public meeting. So if you do need to ask any questions, then please do contact the clerk and the planning officer will communicate with you. Is that okay? Mr Catley, can I hear your good self? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes. I can see you're moving your screen, and can you move your screen back 1 sheet and forward 1 sheet? Okay, Mr Catley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just bear with me. Okay, thank you. So this application relates to a site on land east of Earlham Wharf Road. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 2 commercial units for use for light industrial, general industrial, or storage and distribution purposes, including ancillary office space. The 2.7 hectare site is located to the eastern fringe of North Bank Industrial Park and sits between Earlham Wharf Road and the Manchester Ship Canal. The site is designated as an employment development site under UDP policy E4. Earlham Wharf Road is comprised of 2 arms, each terminating in a roundabout. So you've got the southern arm there, the northern arm there, and they are linked with a footpath and a cycle link. The site is currently overgrown and comprises of predominantly self-seeded trees and scrub, which have taken hold since the site was cleared in the 1980s. Surrounding uses are commercial and include a UPS depot, a universal container services, and the North Bank wastewater treatment works. South of the site is a development known as Amiga Drive, on which 3 commercial units are currently being constructed. So for context, this is a site plan for the Amiga Drive site, with the current application site just visible on the right-hand side here. The photos on this slide show the site in its current state together with the surrounding context. The top right photo shows the adjacent Amiga Drive development as of October last year. So the proposed development comprises of 2 separate industrial units. Unit 1 would extend to 40,000 square feet. It includes a mezzanine level office. Unit 2 extends to 65,500 square feet and again includes ancillary office accommodation. Access to Unit 1 will be taken from the terminus roundabout on the southern arm of Earlham Wharf Road, opposite the UPS depot. A service yard and car parking would be provided to the northeast of the unit with 55 parking spaces, and within that there are 5 electric vehicle charging spaces. Unit 2 would take access to its smaller car park from the same access as Unit 1, so that's their car park there, whilst the service yard and additional car parking would be reached from the northern arm of Earlham Wharf Road. Total of 90 parking spaces would be provided for Unit 2, and again within that there are 5 EV charging spaces. Both units would reach a maximum height of 13.5 metres to the ridge. The size and appearance of the units is ultimately driven by their intended function and operational requirements. However, they're considered to be commensurate with the smart site context. In particular, the size and design of the modern units currently under construction on the adjacent site. So the proposed layout of the scheme incorporates a deep buffer of landscaping and planting, particularly adjacent to the Amiga Drive site, and a significant standoff is retained to the Manchester Ship Canal, with screen planting proposed to reduce the visual impact of the scheme. Despite the site comprising mainly of self-seeded vegetation, it's considered to be of relatively high ecological and biodiversity value. Although substantial landscaping is proposed on site, there is insufficient space available around the units themselves to provide full mitigation on site and ensure biodiversity net gain is achieved. A net loss of 5.6 biodiversity units has been calculated, and so there is a resultant need for off-site tree planting and biodiversity mitigation. Therefore, officers from Greater Manchester Ecology Unit have requested a financial contribution of £56,000 in order to facilitate the delivery of mitigation through tree planting and biodiversity enhancement on council-owned sites. This will be secured by way of a Section 106 agreement. The local highway authority is satisfied that safe and suitable vehicular access would be provided and that the development would not have an adverse impact on the capacity or the safety of the local highway network. However, concerns were raised regarding the suitability of pedestrian and cycle connections to the northern arm of Earlham Wharf Road with regard to the ability for highway users to safely cross Caddishead Way. So therefore, mitigation is proposed by way of an improved non-signalised crossing point near to the junction with Earlham Wharf Road. And this would comprise of drop curb arrangements and a central refuge to allow for the A57 to be crossed by pedestrians and cyclists in 2 movements. The detailed design and implementation of the crossing is to be required by way of a condition and would be funded by the developer. In summary, the development is acceptable in principle, given that this is a long-standing employment area. The design, layout and landscaping proposed are considered to be acceptable, and the development would result in no adverse impacts with respect to the capacity and safety of the highway network in relation to flood risk and drainage, noise, integrity of the Ship Canal Wildlife Corridor, air quality and contamination, and is subject to the recommended conditions. Concerns regarding the accessibility of the site for pedestrians and cyclists can be suitably resolved by way of requiring the delivery of an enhanced crossing point over Caddishead Way near to the junction with Earlham Wharf Road. And the adverse impacts of the loss of relatively low quality self-seeded trees and the net loss of habitat on site can be suitably mitigated by way of a commuted sum payment towards biodiversity mitigation tree planting. This would take place off-site and would be secured by way of a Section 106 agreement. And so the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the completion of the legal agreement and subject to the recommended schedule of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ketley. Ms Edwards, I don't believe that we have any objectors present who wish to speak today. We don't have any objectors present at all. We don't have any applicants present, and there's no ward councillors present.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Edwards. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly again. Mr. Kelly, can I just bring you quickly in? The biodiversity contribution and the £840 monitoring fee. The monitoring fee, is that to monitor the legacy of the net gain of this biodiversity? So essentially, are we now enacting the GM level of biodiversity net gain, well, plus 10%? Is that where we are now, or because I hope we are, because we would be ahead of the game, and that would be fantastic. So I'd just like to understand that, because I'd like to understand how we're going to measure and make sure that that net gain comes to fruition and it does actually produce a net gain. So
we're not quite there yet insofar as the environment bill, which will sort of enshrine this sort of 10% net gain and 30-year monitoring isn't in place yet. I don't think that will be in place for the autumn, and then I think there's a 2-year sort of transfer period. It's something that's picked up in our emerging local plan as well, but again, that's not there yet. It's envisaged, though, that the Section 106 agreement will pick up issues around long-term management, and so the monitoring fee is obviously designed in part to kind of cover that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Members, I think I will bring you in, Councillor Cusack. I think members, you know, we've had a number of applications like this where we have had actually a biodiversity net gain contribution, and each one that we've had come along in the last couple of months, we've decided as a panel to follow the progress of that and give some member oversight, because it's a very important issue to us. So Mr. Catley, I'd like us to do that again. We don't want to get in the way of making decisions and progress. What we'd like to see as members is how things have actually produced to become that net gain, and the process that's followed, and the decisions and that has come about. That's what we'd like to do. Essentially, it just helps members monitor the introduction of biodiversity net gain into Greater Manchester, and specifically Salford and our neighbourhoods ourselves. So that's okay, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kudak, I was taking a bit of Chair's privilege there, so over to you, good self. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. On the question of biodiversity, I note that 113 trees will have to be removed. The majority of those are Category C trees. I've heard councillors in the past say that for every tree that is removed in Salford, we replace it with 2 trees. I don't know whether that's a formal policy or an informal policy. I also don't know whether the number of trees that will replace the trees that are removed will only be to replace the Category B trees or the Category C trees as well. So I'd like some assurances about the number and type of trees that are being replaced and whether we can actually control that under the Section 106 agreement, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Mr Catley, did you hear Councillor Cusack loud and clear?
I did, thank you, yes. The landscaping plan that has been submitted to date indicates that around 100 new trees will be planted within the application site to replace the 113 lost. In terms of the 2-for-1 sort of rule of thumb that we use, yes, that is a material consideration, but obviously 2-for-1 focuses very much on numbers rather than sort of the quality of the planting that goes in, and obviously the quality of the trees that are kind of coming out. So I think in the context of an industrial estate, I think officers have secured a good and generous landscaping scheme here, 100 new trees, and of course there are new trees to be planted as part of the £56,000 contribution through the Section 106, and obviously the numbers for that off-site planting will very much be sort of secured through the Section 106. On site, we've got a landscaping condition which will allow us to kind of give further review of the planting scheme post decision.
Councillor Cusack, does that give you some comfort?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm still not clear on whether we can determine the number of trees that are going to be replanted as a result of this. And I wonder whether the landscaping scheme will come back to this panel at some stage in the future.
We can bring it back for info. Would that be okay? Mr Catley, so we'd like the landscaping scheme to come back for info as well as the biodiversity net gain contribution and how that eventually is spent and how that net gain is monitored over the coming years and time. Is that okay, Mr Catley?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I've received that.
Okay, but there's no one else has indicated. Is anyone willing to move the officer's recommendation? Okay, I saw Councillor Birch and then I saw Councillor Dawson. So Councillor Birch, over to yourself. Sorry about that. It's twinkle in the left eye.
Thank you, Chair. There was an issue raised regarding land contamination. And also, we all know, we've seen the picture by the city mayor of an otter sighting in the city. So my question is, will there be any mitigation measures implemented if the scheme is approved to protect the water from contamination from the contaminated soil? Sorry, too many contaminated words. Well, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Birch, Councillor Antrobus has returned. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr Catley, sud systems and water treatment runoff into the main watercourse. What does this site need to do to mitigate that?
Thank you, Chair. If I understood Councillor Birch's question right, it was perhaps, I suppose, principally around potential contamination during the construction phase. And we have a construction environment management plan condition in place to ensure that best practice measures are followed and that the construction is done in such a way to avoid and minimise any potential leakages and spillages into the ship canal. In terms of the operational development, there is provision, I believe, in place for an oil separator to prevent oil draining from the car park into the drainage system. Surface water drainage is going to be flowing into a UU-owned sewer, which then outfalls into the ship canal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Birch, it sounds like there's much mitigation as possible to make sure there's no contamination to the watercourse. Thank you for raising that very, very, very valid issue indeed. Councillor Dawson.
Yes, it's about use of public transport. On page 33, we've got the nearest bus stop is 0.85 kilometres away in a straight line, and the railway station 0.8 kilometres away in a straight line from the site. So obviously we want to encourage people to use public transport as much as possible. But obviously it's interesting, the crossing on the main road for safety reasons and everything else is going to be provided, and that's good. But how does it all join up? If people wanted to walk to the railway station or from the railway station or from the bus stop, does this crossing link in with that natural way, not in a straight line? We don't want people climbing over edges, but by using the footpaths, you know, is it all linked together and is it designed?
I like a good climb through a hedge, you know, Councillor Dawson. Mr Clemenson, would you introduce yourself, please? And did you hear Councillor Dawson?
I did, Chair. Can you hear myself?
I can hear you.
Good, good, good. It's Mark Clements, Highways Officer for the Council. The reason for the suggested crossing was that there was a need to undertake an accident investigation study as part of the application. And then during doing that, it actually came to the attention of the highways officers that there was a fatality towards the end of last year, unfortunately, in that location. The crossing is informal at the moment and further north of where we're suggesting it should go. And it's obscured by landscaping, so it was considered to be not ideal in its current location. Hence the suggestion from the local highway authority to the case officer that the developer needed to implement this in order to encourage, as you said, Councillor, connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists, and more so to the local residential areas to the north and to the east. I think connectivity is reasonably good on the current existing highway network to the train station and the bus stops. Appreciate the bus stops are beyond the usual requirement, but the development is not of a size to really warrant a diversion of a bus to this site per se. So we felt that the provision of the crossing would increase that sustainable access for active travel for residents in the Earlham and Cadishead area.
Thank you, Mr Clements. Is that okay, Councillor Dawson?
Yeah, I welcome that. I welcome that response. Trying to get the crossing in the best possible position is welcome. I think we should encourage that.
And it's a terrible shame that someone lost their life at that part of the road. It's a terrible shame. Members, the officer's recommendation is for approval. Is anybody willing to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor McCusker? Moving the officer, anyone want a second, Councillor Birch? And so it's been moved and seconded with the extra, it's not conditions, it's just things that we'd like to return to the panel through the biodiversity and the landscaping condition so that we can monitor the progress and the future of the site. Is that okay, Mr Kelly? Okay, all in favour of that, please show. Okay, I make that 9 votes for, and there's no one against. And there's no abstentions. Ms Edwards, I made that 9-0, all in favour, unanimous. So, ladies and gentlemen, the application has been approved. Thank you so much. Okay, members, moving right on to our next item, 5C, which is on page 47 to 58 of your agenda. Mr Stevenson is presenting. Mr Stevenson, I believe that is your front screen. Could you just move to your next screen? Yep, so you can clearly hear me, but can I hear you?
Hopefully you can, Chair. Good morning.
I can, Mr Stevenson. Mr Stevenson, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this next application relates to 301 Walkden Road in Worsley. And you can see from the proposed description there that it's for the demolition of an existing public house and the erection of a 3-storey building comprising a 71-bed care facility, together with alterations to access, parking and landscaping. You'll note from the report that permission was granted by this panel in March last year for a 70-bed care facility. And what this application effectively does is to convert what was intended to be a storeroom into an additional bedroom So a very simple alteration to an already consented scheme. This is the site location plan of what was formerly the Cock Hotel on site. You can see to the north we've got the petrol filling station with the Worsley Cricket Club and Ellesmere Sports Club to the rear and residential in the wider area. Just an image from Google to help you understand what was previously there. Again, an image from Street View and a photo taken yesterday where you can see that the construction of the care facility is already at a very advanced stage on site. This was the site layout that was presented to panel last year. There have been some very minor changes through non-material amendment, but substantially it is the same. It just gives you a sense of the building being set back from the road, the location of the car parking, and also the landscaping space. That is an elevation of the building, what it will look like once completed. And importantly, what members are asked to consider today is the conversion of this room here, which, as I've said, was a storeroom, into an additional bedroom, following the same layout as the existing ones and of a similar size as well. So in terms of the provision of the additional unit, that carries positive weight in the determination of the application, given that it will, albeit make a small contribution, does make a contribution to housing need. There'll be no impact upon visual amenity as there are no external changes. It won't impact nearby neighbours, and it will have no significant impact on car parking in the area, and therefore, Chair, it's recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr Stevenson. Ms Edwards, I don't believe we have anybody here who's speaking as an objector or an applicant or a ward member.
No, we don't, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, the officer's recommendation is for approval. It's one additional room to the same standards that the other rooms were built in, and it's previously been at the panel and been through the whole system. Is anybody willing to move the officer's recommendation? Okay, I've got three hands. Councillor Cusack, I think you've got ahead there, so are you happy to move the officer's recommendation, Councillor Cusack?
I'm happy to move it.
Okay, is anyone willing to second the officer's recommendation? Councillor Reynolds? Oh, okay, thank you, Councillor Reynolds. So, ladies, members of the panel, it's been moved and seconded for approval. Please, if you're in favour, please show your hands. Okay, I believe that was a unanimous 9 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, the application has been approved. Thank you so much. Okay, members, we're moving right on to item 6, which is for note. Are you happy to move the delegated authority report? And anyone will second it? Thank you. And then over to planning appeals. Mr Stevenson, are we doing a small presentation on the planning appeals? Do you want to just run through them quite quickly?
I can do, Chair. So the first...
Or is Mr Catley looking after planning appeals this month? I do apologise.
We can do it between us, Chair. Yeah.
Oh, I like to see this. This will be quite fun.
So appeals decided. Yeah, Tetlow Grove, you'll see that one was recommended for approval by officers, came before this panel and the panel refused it. And the appeal inspector agreed with some of the concerns of the panel and dismissed the appeal in relation to the dormer to the rear and the design impact that would have on the street. The next appeal is at 244 Liverpool Road, Cadishead. That was an application for a 48-sheet advert, and that was a refusal under delegated authority, and the inspector agreed with the officer's concerns there in terms of the visual impact on the street. Interestingly, the decision you'll see there towards the end on paragraph 11 of the inspector's report does make a comment that the consideration of adverts is very tightly constrained in terms of amenity, because you can only consider amenity and safety for adverts, and makes the explicit point that amenity does not extend to considering living conditions. So that's a useful decision for us to maybe take reference from in the future.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Stevens. Did you just say that amenity? Could you just repeat that again for me, please?
Yeah, so what the inspector, on advert applications, what national and local policy states is that you can only consider safety and amenity. And the national planning guidance goes on to talk about amenity, including visual and oral amenity. And the inspector says that the planning guidance effectively does not extend to considerations relating to living conditions. That's a statement that the inspector's made. It's an interesting point, something we need to digest and maybe look at. But I think the key point is that the focus of adverts is about visual amenity.
Yeah, interesting. Sorry, Mr. Stevenson, I interrupted your flow. Please carry on.
That's okay, because the next one is a little bit contradictory in some respects, in that this is for 2 internally illuminated adverts. Again, it was refused by delegated powers for officers. The appeal was dismissed. As part of the consideration, it was the relationship of the advert to the residents at the rear, and the inspector did recognise that the sort of visual presence of it, if you will, does have an impact on the neighbours. So I think it can impact on amenity of neighbours can be a consideration, but I think it's more about the visual amenity in its presence and overshadowing and those kind of concerns, Chair.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see that decision from the inspectorate. We have great difficulty with the building next door at the moment, and those residents are having great difficulty with that new development next door. So yeah, I'm pleased to see that decision from the inspectorate.
The next one is the Spinney, which many members on the panel will be familiar with. It's had quite a long history. It was brought before the panel with a recommendation to approve. The panel had concerns about the development and therefore refused it, but the inspector, having considered all the merits, considered it to be an acceptable form of development and granted permission. There was an application for costs against the council, but the inspector considered that the grounds that the members refused it on, although he didn't agree with them, he didn't see them as unreasonable grounds and therefore didn't award costs against the council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. The panel. You carry on. I'll find my words later.
Okay, so those were the appeals decided, and we've received a number of new appeals. So we've got one at Ellenbrook Road, which is for a prior approval for a 20-metre high telecoms monopole. Members will be aware that with the rollout of 5G, we've seen a very high volume of these types of applications, a number of which have been approved and some have been refused. So that one's been appealed. We've got another one at Delamere Avenue, which was a change from a dwelling to a small HMO. Again, a delegated decision. And there's the final one there, Chair, relates to an advert south of Railway Bridge Trinity Way. And what they've actually appealed against is the imposition of a condition which limits the luminance level of the sign. Now, this decision was taken about a month before we went through a process of review with another advert provider, and we consulted with the Institute of Lighting Professionals to come up with a new condition, which effectively is what the appellant is, in this case, is asking for. So we've written to that appellant to say the appeal process isn't really the right vehicle to deal with this, but if you'd like to submit an application to us to vary that condition, it's something that we would now support. So we'll wait to hear on that one. So that one may fall away in due course, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Thank you so much.
And there's 2 more at the end, which I've missed there, relating to 22 and 24 Ash Drive, where they've effectively extended the garden over a rear alleyway, which has caused some concern, so that's been refused.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Members, are you happy to note that report? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, members, that was our last item. There's no urgent business. There's no need to exclude the public, as we have no part 2. Mr. Williams, could you please end the live stream? And